Britain. As we turn now to war, Vice President Joe Biden's in Brussels today to get NATO allies to support the U.S. surge in Afghanistan with more troops. The Obama administration's ordered 17,000 more U.S. troops to Afghanistan to fight as part of an escalation of the 7-year-old war. Meanwhile, in an interview with the New York Times, President Obama admitted the U.S. is not winning the war in Afghanistan. He also revealed the U.S. is considering reaching out to moderate elements of the Taliban, as he put it, much as it did with Sunni militias in Iraq. On Sunday, thousands of women across Afghanistan donned blue scarves and came together for a prayer for peace with justice. The gatherings marked International Women's Day. That night, I spoke with Rangina Hamidi. She is a former resident of the United States who returned to her native Afghanistan shortly after the 9/11 attacks. Today, she's president of Kandahar Treasure, the first woman-run business in her hometown of Kandahar, helping Afghan women sell locally made embroidery. I asked Rangina Hamidi about the significance of the International Women's Day in Afghanistan.
In Kandahar, we got together we got together last year and decided that as the government agencies have been celebrating International Day for Women, which falls on March 8th every year, we did not want to be necessarily celebrating the day when so many women were in mourning because they were losing a lot of their male relatives or male members of their families almost on a daily basis. So in 2008, on March 8th, the women in our network gathered together, more than 1,500 of them, to commemorate the day by praying for peace, because they've been in war for literally more than 30 years. And women are sick and tired of it, and they don't know, on a local level, they don't know any political figure locally or nationally and or even internationally that they can go to have their voices and have their plea be heard. So because this is a religious and a conservative society, the women said, who better to pray to about peace than God? These are all believing women, and so they gathered for the first time publicly to pray for peace. And it was not a program to necessarily get a lot of media. I mean, it was an event kind of almost ad hoc to expect the local government and the insurgents to hear the women's voice. And unexpectedly, a lot of media came and covered the event, and the women's voices were heard surprisingly all over the world. So in Kandahar, yesterday, we had more than, we had hundreds of women show up, and all of them were praying for peace. The age group, we probably had women in their 70s and as young as 10 and 12. Even babies came to our event with their mothers. And it was a very peaceful and a calm event. All of the women were wearing light blue scarves as a symbol of peace and stability that they'd chosen. And basically it was a short event, but an event full of a lot of meaning, because the women want the world to know that they're active in their pursuit, in their way of pursuing peace and stability, because a lot of the women know that the men, unfortunately, in our country, whether they're in politics or not in politics, be either businessmen or just men in society, it seems that men are not trying hard enough to ask for peace. And so the women have taken it upon themselves that because they have never been an active part of the wars in the past 30+ years, they want to now be the active agents of calling for peace.
Rangina, right now, U.S. policy, President Obama announcing the surge in Afghanistan, tens of thousands of more troops being sent in. What does this mean for Afghanistan, and particularly Kandahar? I mean, in the last week, we've heard about the 3 Canadian soldiers that were killed. I don't know how many Afghan men, women, and children have been killed, but what about this policy?
Okay, that's a great question. In fact, last night we were at a friend's house for dinner, And I'll begin by quoting her directly. Her name was Shala, and she said, quote, "Every time someone from my household goes out, I accept in my heart that they may not come back." This is the kind of feeling and attitude that most Afghan people live with today. And she also, she was someone that you do not expect to have any political opinion or basically an opinion and an idea of the current situation. But she was very open to share her thoughts with us, especially when she pointed this after, quoting her, we continued talking to her, and then she surprisingly, she said when Obama was being elected to become president of the United States, there was hope in her family, and she said that I had hope that things might change, and things in terms of the military and political situation of Afghanistan. Because she said we don't want more killing to occur. But as Obama decided, obviously after being sworn in as president, that he will send more troops translate to more killing here. And so she was very unhappy about that decision. And this is not the decision only of her, but the decision of mine and or the opinion of mine and so many other people here who share this frustration that America needs to better focus on its strategy about what they're doing here and what they want to accomplish in Afghanistan. Merely sending more troops will not solve the problem. This is a political situation where, in my opinion, this is my personal opinion, that for every one individual we kill, and often it's easy to claim that this is a Talib. We bombard a village and then say, well, we killed the Taliban. That's not necessarily true. A lot of innocent people get killed. The common people are stuck in the middle. So on the one hand, the Taliban or insurgents might come at the nighttime with guns and ammunition and force the village people to keep them, meaning give them housing, give them food. And when they do that, because they can't, ordinary people cannot fight back, in the morning, or it may be a day or two later, the military get reports that the Taliban or insurgents have come, and then they come and start bombarding. So when they bombard, the bombs are blind. They don't see who's Taliban and who's not. We can't differentiate between the ordinary people and the Taliban. So a lot of innocent people are being killed in the process, and the psychological effect on people is that whether it's a Talib or an ordinary person, it's an Afghan that is being killed at the end. And so it is very hard to not feel bad for innocent people being killed. And so my assessment is that for every one person that we kill, we're creating 10 more who are against us. So if this policy of war and killing continues, I don't know if we're going to get any good result in the near future. My personal recommendation, and that of many Afghans, is that the strategy about going forward with this war needs to change, for one, with a heavy focus and a critical focus on development. Afghanistan remains, after 7 years or 8 years of the international community's involvement, to be a very severely undeveloped nation, with poverty still on the rise and corruption still very much as part of an integral part of the current government that we have. So unless there's focus or a push from the international community to force the government, because the government, after all, is the government, after all, is operating on behalf of or as a representative of the people, but it is so corrupt. And obviously the government is getting a lot of assistance and aid from the international community to continue its operations. The international community has a responsibility to put enough pressure on Karzai and his government to address the issue of corruption. And unless we address the issue of corruption, development becomes a very hard issue, because even though many Afghans know that a lot of aid has come since the past 8 years. Because of the corruption, or because of the level of corruption, the people in the very end, the people in the villages, the people in the small cities, have hardly seen any kind of difference in their lives from when the time the Taliban were in power to now. So you can imagine the effect that this is having on ordinary people, and the frustration and the anger. And it's hard to accept this fact, but I can understand why ordinary Afghans would want to go and join forces with the insurgents and or the Taliban, because the alternative government, or the government in power right now, has failed to provide any services or development to the people.
Rangina Hamidi is an Afghan activist. She's speaking to us from Kandahar. We'll come back to the conversation in a minute.